Welcome back to Gizmo Guild TV. Today we have a little woodworking project. A while ago we were given this gong and mallet. It's a small gong of the type used in the tea ceremony here in Japan, and I've always wanted to make a stand for it. So today we'll do that. It won't be anything fancy. I'll just use up a couple of 1x4s. If we do it with a little care, I'm sure we can come up with something nice. So first, let's cut up some 1x4s. I really enjoy seeing what I can come up with using cheap construction lumber, so this old miter saw gets a lot of use. I usually bring it out here to the deck, weather permitting, and that reduces the need for sawdust cleanup in the shop. Now that we've got 1x4 chunks cut to approximately the right length, let's go back inside and work on the details. I wanted to lay out some large curves, but didn't have a compass anywhere near big enough. So I simply clamped a piece of rod in the end vise, tied a piece of string around that, and being careful to maintain constant tension on the string, was able to draw the kind of curves I needed. Sorta. Pull a little too hard on the string or change the angle of the pencil, and the curves can get pretty weird. So over to the bandsaw to cut out those shapes. And yes, I know that saw blade guard is just a little too high, but if it's any lower, I can't see where I'm cutting. The bandsaw is another tool that gets a lot of use around my shop. It's amazing what you can do with these things, especially if you keep them tuned and aligned. I used this little 1-inch belt sander to refine the shapes a bit and remove the saw marks. I've had this old thing around for at least 20 years, and it's in dire need of some work. Maybe we'll do a restoration and tune-up in a future video, but for now, it has done what it needed to do. All the parts are ready, so we can start putting them together. I initially fantasized about doing this whole build without any fasteners of any kind, just pure woodworking. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it would take way more time than I was prepared to spend. So I decided to fall back on one of my favorite construction methods, pocket holes. They don't work for everything, but in this case, they actually worked out really well. There are plenty of alternatives, but I use a couple of Craig jigs that I find to be very satisfactory. Pocket holes make it fairly easy to do even tricky jobs like the one I'm doing here. I'm edge joining these two pieces of wood. Glue isn't always necessary, but I decided it would be a good idea in this case. Once the glue is applied, just align the parts. Use the Craig face clamp to keep them from moving. Pop in the screws and then tighten them up. That's basically it for an edge joint like this. Now just wipe off some of the squeeze out and you're done. With a little ingenuity, you can make just about any kind of joint. In this case, I used a stop block clamped to the vertical side panel to keep the horizontal rail in place. The rail will then be clamped to that block to make sure it doesn't move. Because pocket hole screws go in at an angle, they can pull things out of alignment if the parts aren't held securely. It's really important to make sure that everything is solid. So we apply the glue, realizing that we probably should have been using a brush for this rather than our fingers. Place the part into position And once we're sure it's exactly where we want it to be, we use a second clamp to secure the rail to the stop block. Once that's done, the procedure is the same as before. Pop in a screw, tighten it up, and that's enough to hold the part in place so we can remove the clamp before installing the second screw. That's the job done. Purists will howl with disapproval, but it works, so why not? The glue has had 24 hours to cure, so now it's time to apply a little finish. This takes a while. Let the first coat dry, then rub it down with some sandpaper, or in this case, Scotch-Brite. Apply another coat, being careful not to get any drips or runs, and let it dry. Then more rubbing down to prepare for the next coat, and on until you're satisfied with the way it looks. I modified a couple of picture hooks I had lying around to hang the gong and the mallet on the side. Once those were attached, we had a gong stand. It's kind of hard to see on that cluttered bench, but it actually came out quite nicely. Our gong can now be displayed and even used, although I'm not sure for what. I'm sure it'll be happier on its new stand than it was in its little box.